My name is Amelia Benton, and I come from a family that loves appearances more than affection. Growing up, it was clear that my older sister Brielle was the favorite. She was graceful, charming, and excelled at all the things my parents valued: ballet, piano, and smiling at all the right moments. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more analytical. I preferred books to parties and logic to flattery. It was never stated outright, but the favoritism oozed from every holiday, every family photo, every carefully chosen word from my mother's lips. Still, I tried to be the dutiful daughter, did my chores, got good grades, and never spoke back. But no matter what I did, I never seemed to be enough. My family's affection for Brielle wasn't just emotional, it was material. She got a car for her 16th birthday. I got a bike, with a flat tire. For her graduation, they gifted her a trip to Paris. I got a backpack. They always had an excuse, of course. "You said you liked practical things, Amelia," my mom would say. Or, "We'll do something special for you next time." But next time never came. I thought maybe, just maybe, my baby shower would be different. I was 7 months pregnant with my first child, a little girl. My husband, Daniel, and I were thrilled. We had been trying for a while, and this pregnancy felt like a miracle after a long road of fertility treatments. I had high hopes that the baby shower would be a turning point, that maybe becoming a mother myself would finally earn me a place of respect in my own family. The shower was hosted at my parents' house, and it was lavish. Pink and white decorations covered every surface. A custom cake sat proudly in the center of the dining table, surrounded by finger foods and floral arrangements. Guests bustled around, laughing, sipping lemonade, and admiring the setup. For once, I allowed myself to feel proud. This was for me. Or so I thought. Brielle walked in an hour late, as usual, but the room practically stopped for her. She was wearing a designer maternity dress even though she wasn't pregnant, just showing solidarity, she claimed with a laugh. She hugged me lightly, careful not to wrinkle her blouse, and took center stage immediately. The attention shifted so seamlessly that I almost laughed. Of course. It was still her show. When it came time for gifts, I sat in the chair surrounded by pink wrapping paper, smiling as I unwrapped tiny clothes, toys, and baby blankets. Then my mother handed me a small gift bag, and everyone leaned in. I opened it carefully, hoping, no, praying, it was something meaningful. Something that said, "We see you." Inside was a stack of cloth napkins. Pink, embroidered napkins. I stared at them, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "For the baby's future tea parties," my mom said brightly. Laughter echoed around the room, but not from me. I swallowed the knot forming in my throat and smiled weakly. "Thanks, Mom." Moments later, she handed Brielle a velvet box. My sister gasped as she opened it to reveal a gold bracelet with a tiny heart charm. "It's a family heirloom," my mom explained. "I wanted you to have it. It felt like the right time." The room clapped. My heart cracked. I excused myself to the kitchen under the pretense of checking on the cupcakes. I leaned against the counter, letting the weight of years of rejection crash into me. The napkins. The bracelet. The cheers for her. The silence for me. I wasn't imagining things, I never had been. I just wasn't their chosen one. Daniel found me there minutes later. He didn't say anything. He just pulled me into a hug, and I buried my face in his chest. "You don't deserve this," he whispered. "You never did." I nodded, wiping my tears. "I know. But this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. Not anymore." That night, after the guests left, I sat down at our dining table and wrote a letter. Not a rant, not a plea. Just the truth, plain and raw. I didn't accuse or insult. I just described how I felt growing up, and how their choices had made me feel like a shadow. I told them about the car, the Paris trip, the backpack, and yes, even the napkins. I told them that I would no longer beg for a seat at their table. I was building my own. I placed the letter in a crisp envelope and left it on my parents' hallway table the next morning. They'd read it, eventually. And when they did, maybe they'd understand. Or maybe they wouldn't. But either way, I was done being invisible. That moment, quietly walking out of their house without saying a word, felt more powerful than any confrontation I could have imagined. Because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I was reclaiming my voice. The morning after I delivered the letter, I felt strangely light. It wasn't joy, more like a quiet relief, as if I'd finally taken off a mask I didn't even know I was wearing. Daniel made me breakfast, humming a soft tune while flipping pancakes. He didn't ask what I wrote, and I didn't offer. It wasn't his burden to carry. That letter was mine, a final release of everything I had bottled up since I was a child. By noon, my phone buzzed. One message from my mother. "We need to talk." I stared at the screen. No hi, honey, no how are you feeling? Just that cold, clipped sentence. I didn't reply. I wasn't ready. I was still living in the aftershock of truth. Instead, I focused on setting up the nursery. Daniel and I had spent months planning it, and now, surrounded by soft yellows and mint greens, I felt something I hadn't felt around my family in a long time: peace. Every stuffed animal, every tiny sock, every piece of carefully folded baby clothing felt like a declaration: you belong here. You are wanted here. But even in that cozy space, doubt crept in. Had I gone too far? Should I have said it to their faces? Was a letter too impersonal? I kept replaying my mother's message in my head, wondering what exactly she wanted to talk about. An apology? Unlikely. A defense? Almost certainly. That evening, I received a second message, this time from Brielle. "Amelia, what the hell was that letter?" There it was. The fury. The confusion. The entitlement. I could almost hear her voice, sharp and incredulous. I didn't respond. I didn't owe her an explanation. If she was shocked, that meant she'd never really been paying attention. And wasn't that the problem all along? A few days passed. No calls. No visits. Just silence. Oddly, that silence spoke volumes. In a family that prided itself on control and decorum, silence was the loudest reaction possible. But it didn't scare me anymore. I had Daniel. I had a baby on the way. I had truth. That was enough. Until the uninvited knock. It was a Friday afternoon. Rain tapped against the windows as I folded baby blankets on the couch. When I opened the door, my mother stood there, umbrella in one hand, the gold bracelet in the other. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Her eyes were red, but not from crying, more like lack of sleep. Her lips parted, then closed. She held out the bracelet. "I think this was a mistake," she said. I looked at it. The same delicate chain Brielle had flaunted just days earlier. My chest tightened. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because," she said, stepping inside without being invited, "you're right. You were right. About the car. The trips. The napkins. God, the napkins." She said it with such disbelief, as if she too was just now realizing how ridiculous it had all been. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she added, sitting on the arm of the couch. "You were always so independent. I thought you didn't care." I swallowed hard. I did care. I still do. I just stopped showing it. She nodded slowly. "I see that now. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly. But it was the closest thing I'd ever gotten from her. And in that moment, I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to rehash every wound or tally every slight. I just wanted to feel heard. "I don't need the bracelet," I said. What I needed was to be seen." She hesitated, then placed the bracelet on the table and stood up. "Maybe someday, you'll want it. It belonged to your grandmother." I nodded, unsure what to say. She lingered for a moment, then walked to the door. Before leaving, she paused. "Your father read the letter too. He's processing. You know how he is." Yes, I did. Stoic. Silent. Always letting my mother take the lead in everything emotional. Processing probably meant avoiding. After she left, I sat with the bracelet for a long time. I didn't put it on. I didn't cry. I just sat. There was a strange power in that silence, like I had finally taken control of a story that had always been written for me. The next day, Brielle showed up. No text. No warning. Just her, standing in our driveway in oversized sunglasses and a trench coat, like she was auditioning for a drama. Daniel opened the door before I could stop him. She stepped in, removing her glasses. "Amelia, we need to talk." I crossed my arms. "So talk." She scoffed. "That letter was cruel." I blinked. "Cruel? You think I'm the cruel one? You embarrassed Mom. And Dad. And me. Everyone's talking. I didn't write it for everyone. I wrote it for me." She threw her hands up. "We're family. We're supposed to keep things in the family, not air dirty laundry like this." I shook my head. "That's exactly the problem. We keep things buried until they rot. I'm done with that." There was silence. Real, heavy silence. Then, softly, she asked, "Do you really think Mom and Dad love me more?" I looked at her. For the first time, really looked. "Yes," I said quietly. "I do." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just stood there, stunned. And that was all the confirmation I needed. Brielle stood in the middle of my living room, blinking like she hadn't heard me right. "Yes," I repeated, my voice calm. "I believe they've always loved you more." For a moment, neither of us said a word. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock, counting every heavy second between us. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her hands fidgeted with a belt of her coat. This was a side of Brielle I hadn't seen in years, uncertain, vulnerable, quiet. "I never asked for that," she finally muttered. "No," I said, "but you didn't refuse it either." She looked down. "How could I? I was just a kid. We were both just kids. But I had to work for every ounce of attention I got. You? It was handed to you like that bracelet." Her eyes flicked to the coffee table, where the gold chain still rested. "I didn't even want it," she whispered. I raised an eyebrow. "Funny how you wore it proudly at the baby shower then." "That was before the letter," she snapped. "Before I knew how much you resented me." I shook my head. "It's not resentment, Brielle. It's grief. Grief for the sister I wanted and the parents I hoped would see me for who I was." Brielle looked at me, eyes glistening. "Why didn't you ever say anything before?" I sighed, sinking into the couch. "Because I was afraid it would come to this, us, fractured beyond repair. But holding it in was killing me. And I couldn't bring that into motherhood." She hesitated, then took a tentative step forward. "Can I sit?" I nodded, gesturing to the chair opposite me. She sat slowly, folding her hands in her lap like a schoolgirl being scolded. For a few minutes, we sat in silence. Then she asked, "What now?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "This isn't about punishment. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. But I'm done pretending everything's okay." She swallowed hard. "Do you want me out of your life?" I shook my head. "I want you in my life, but not as someone who looks through me. I need honesty. Accountability. A real relationship, not just holiday photos and passive-aggressive smiles." She nodded slowly. "Okay." We both jumped a little when the front door opened. Daniel walked in, arms full of groceries. His eyes widened when he saw Brielle. Hi," he said awkwardly. "Hey," she murmured, standing up. "I was just leaving." As she walked toward the door, she paused. "Amelia?" "Yeah? I'll try. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'll try." It wasn't a promise, but it was something. After she left, Daniel set the bags down and joined me on the couch. "That looked intense." I nodded, leaning against him. "It was. But maybe, just maybe, it's a start." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about how many years I had spent in silence. How often I had laughed through hurt, posed for photos next to people who made me feel invisible, and swallowed words like they were poison. And now, the truth was out there, messy, raw, imperfect, but real. The next few weeks passed quietly. No dramatic confrontations. No angry phone calls. My parents didn't reach out again, but that was expected. Processing, my mother had said. In my family, processing usually meant sweeping things under a very expensive rug. But then, one afternoon, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name printed in neat handwriting. Inside was a letter. From my father. Amelia. I read your letter more times than I can count. At first, I was angry. Defensive. I wanted to say you misunderstood everything. But then I realized, maybe I misunderstood you. You were always so capable. So self-sufficient. I thought the best thing I could do was step back and let you be. I didn't realize that what you needed wasn't space, it was support. I failed you in that way. I see that now. I can't rewrite the past, but I hope we can begin again. When the baby arrives, I'd like to be a part of their life. And yours. Love. Dad. I read it 3 times. Then a 4th. By the 5th time, my vision was too blurry with tears to see. I didn't know what moved me more, the acknowledgement, or the effort it must have taken him to put pen to paper. My father wasn't a man of many words, but these felt carefully chosen. Honest. Later that evening, Daniel found me staring at the letter, silent. You okay? He asked, gently rubbing my back. I nodded. I think I'm healing. He smiled. You deserve it. And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. I sat at the kitchen table, my father's letter still resting beside my teacup. I had reread it so many times the folds were beginning to tear. Each word had etched itself into my memory, softer than I'd expected. For once, his voice didn't sound distant or dismissive, it sounded real. Like a father. The doorbell rang, and I felt a flutter in my chest. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I was greeted by a face I hadn't seen in weeks, Mom. She stood awkwardly on the porch, hands clasped in front of her, dressed in one of her tailored coats that always made her look like she was heading to a charity gala. I didn't call, she said, her voice unsure. I wasn't sure you'd pick up. I stepped aside. Come in. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. I made her tea, just like she liked it, 1 sugar, no milk. She took a sip, her hands trembling slightly. Your father showed me your letter. And his reply. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. It hurt, she said plainly. I won't lie to you. Reading that you felt invisible all these years. It shattered something inside me. I didn't write it to hurt you, I said, keeping my voice steady. I wrote it because I needed to be heard. She looked down at her cup. I know. And you were right. About a lot of things. That admission stunned me. My mother rarely admitted fault. She was the kind of woman who could host a dinner party through a migraine and still smile through dessert. I thought I was doing what was best, she continued. Brielle always needed more, she was fragile. Emotional. You, on the other hand, were strong. Independent. I didn't realize I was mistaking strength for not needing support. That strength came from not having another choice, I replied. Her eyes welled up. I see that now. And I'm sorry, Amelia. It was the first time I'd heard her say my name in a way that didn't sound like she was announcing me at a country club event. It felt warm. There was a long pause, broken only by the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. What's this? I asked. She slid it across the table. It's a letter. I wrote it after I read yours. I didn't know if I'd have the courage to give it to you. I hesitated before unfolding it. The handwriting was neat, of course it was. My mother believed in fountain pens and fine stationery. My dear Amelia. You were never second to me, not in my heart. But I failed to show you that, and that's what matters. I let my fear of upsetting balance keep me from doing the right thing. I leaned too far toward Brielle, assuming you'd always be fine on your own. You deserved more love, more acknowledgement, more celebration. I cannot undo the years, but I want to move forward. If you'll let me, I want to be present for you, for your child, and for the mother you are becoming. With love and regret. Mom. When I finished reading, I let out a shaky breath. That must have been hard to write. She nodded. It was. But not as hard as reading yours. I met her eyes. I want to believe you. I really do. But it's going to take time. I understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not asking for everything to be okay right away. I just want the chance to be better. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. And for us, that was a beginning. After she left, I sat alone for a while, letting the quiet settle around me. I could still feel the remnants of old hurt swirling inside me, but now, there was something else too, a small, flickering hope. A few days later, Brielle called. Hey, she said. I know we're not exactly in a great place, but Mom told me she saw you. She did, I said. There was a pause, then, did she mean it? What she said? I think she did. Another pause. Can I come by? I looked around at the living room scattered with baby shower gifts, cards, and unopened boxes. Sure? An hour later, Brielle showed up in sweatpants and no makeup, a rare sight for someone who usually treated every outing like a photo shoot. She looked tired. Human. We sat on the floor together, sorting through baby clothes and pacifiers. I wanted to tell you, she said after a while, holding a tiny onesie, that I've started therapy. I turned to her, surprised. Really? Yeah. After everything that happened. I realized I have stuff to unpack too. About being the favorite. About guilt. About us. I nodded, trying to hold back the swell of emotion that rose in my throat. I don't want to be the reason you feel unloved, she continued. I don't want to repeat that cycle with your baby. You won't, I said softly. This generation, we get to break the patterns. She smiled. Do you think we'll be okay? I reached for her hand. I think we already are. And in that moment, surrounded by tiny clothes and shared truth, I felt something shift. The air between us cleared, the silence between us no longer suffocating but filled with possibilities. The morning of my baby's arrival didn't begin like a movie. There were no dramatic water breaks in the middle of a grocery store or panicked drives through traffic. It was quiet. I woke up to soft contractions, the kind that let you know something's coming but give you time to breathe before it takes over. The bag was already packed. The crib assembled. The letters from both my mom and dad were safely tucked into a drawer next to tiny socks and the ultrasound photos. I had reread them both the night before, again. They'd become my strange comfort. Ready? Jason asked gently as we got into the car. As I'll ever be, I said, smiling through the nerves. At the hospital, everything blurred. Nurses came in and out. Machines beeped. Pain swelled, then receded, then returned stronger. I don't remember much about the labor except the moments between pushes when I thought about my mom's face, about Brielle's apology, about the empty seat at my baby shower. And then, just like that, he was here. A boy. Healthy, loud, and perfect. Tears ran down my cheeks as I held him to my chest. The world narrowed down to the weight of his tiny body and the softness of his skin against mine. We named him Micah James, a name we chose not from family tradition or expectation, but because it felt like ours. Like a fresh start. When the nurses cleaned him and took his measurements, Jason stepped out to call family. I expected congratulations, of course, but not what happened next. The door opened, and in walked my mom. She was wearing the same pearl earrings she had worn to all our childhood events, the ones I had once called her favorite things. Her hands trembled slightly, holding a box wrapped in plain brown paper. I wasn't sure if I should come, she said quietly, her eyes welling with tears. But Jason called, and I needed to meet him. I nodded, unable to speak. She stepped closer, her eyes falling on the tiny bundle in my arms. "Micah," I said softly. "His name is Micah." Her lips quivered as she whispered, "He's beautiful." We sat in silence for a moment, then she reached for my hand. "I brought something. It's not much, and it's late. But I wanted to give it to you myself." I took the box and slowly unwrapped it. Inside was a velvet case. My breath caught when I opened it, a bracelet. Gold. Simple. Elegant. Just like the one she had given Brielle. "I had it made after I read your letter," she said, voice shaking. "It's not to match anything. It's to mark something. You becoming a mother. You creating life. You breaking the patterns I didn't even realize I passed on." I looked at her, stunned. "You didn't have to." "I know," she said. "But I wanted to. You deserve it. Not because it's gold, but because you matter." My tears came again, harder this time. Not from pain, not from exhaustion, but from release. Years of silence, of bitterness, of being overlooked, beginning to melt away. A few hours later, Brielle arrived, holding a small bouquet of flowers and an expression I hadn't seen on her before, pure awe. "Can I hold him?" she asked. I nodded. She took Micah into her arms like he was made of glass. "I still can't believe you're a mom." "Neither can I," I said, chuckling softly. She looked at me, her expression suddenly serious. "You're going to be so good at this, Amelia." "I mean it." I smiled. "Thanks, Bri." We sat together, quiet again, watching Micah sleep. Then Brielle reached into her purse. "I got you something too," she said, blushing a little. "It's kind of silly, but..." It was a framed picture of us as kids. In matching dresses, holding hands, our faces smeared with chocolate cake. On the frame, she had inscribed, "We were always better together. Let's try again." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. 3 days later, we came home. The house felt different. Not just because of the baby gear and diapers, but because the weight that had lived inside me for years seemed lighter now. Jason set Micah in his crib, and I sat on the edge of the bed, watching him sleep. "What are you thinking?" Jason asked, wrapping his arms around me. "I'm thinking I never expected this," I whispered. "Not the peace. Not the healing. Not this second chance with my family." "You made it happen," he said. "You were brave enough to speak up. That changed everything." I looked at him, then at our son, then down at the bracelet on my wrist. It wasn't the gold that mattered, it was what it represented. It was proof that sometimes, telling the truth, even when it hurts, is the first step to building something better. 2 weeks later, we held a small gathering at our house. Just family. No fancy table settings or gift comparisons. Just love, laughter, and a new beginning. As we ate, Mom helped wash dishes, and Brielle changed Micah's diaper with a confidence I never expected from her. At one point, I caught my reflection in the mirror, tired eyes, messy hair, a baby in my arms, and I smiled. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was someone's mother now. And that meant I had the power to write a new story. One where no child would ever feel like just the one who got napkins.